Can a Bowie knife replace a sword in the kit of a monster hunter? When it's as large as this one, maybe it can. Hello, this is Kyle, also known as AlienTube, and today I'm taking a look at the Heretic, a rather large and imposing Bowie knife designed by my friend the Levin Lance and brought to life by Purna Darnal. So if you're not familiar with the Levin Lance, also known as Brother Nathaniel, he's designed a whole lot of different swords, weapons, and just a whole variety of really cool fantasy-inspired, but still realistic weapons. He has his own YouTube channel, I'll put a link in the description, and I encourage you to check it out. I've done a couple reviews of blades designed by the Levin Lance already, both a vampire killer Bowie knife and a push dagger. Check them out for a little bit more about what his design philosophy and the lore behind his setting is. So the Heretic is, as I said, kind of designed to see if a Bowie knife could replace a sword in the kit of a monster hunter. And, you know, this is definitely short for a sword, but in terms of a knife, it's pretty big. It's a big honky knife. It has more hand protection than you would normally see on a knife with the D-guard here in twisted brass, along with, I'm not sure what this little piece is called, but this extension is shaped to look like it's either a snake or a dragon. I'm not sure which. I think it might be intended to be a dragon, but to me it looks more like a snake. That extra protection is good for a sidearm. You want to be able to protect your hand as you're fighting. Now it comes with a scabbard. This is wood core, leather wrapped. Now Purna Darnal is primarily a kukri maker, and this scabbard is extremely similar to the kukri scabbards he normally makes. It doesn't have a chape. It's got a very similar design to his kukri scabbards, and a belt loop on it. It's a pretty good fit. There's a little bit of rattle to it, but not very much. And if you shake it while upside down, it does eventually slide out, but you do need to shake it quite a bit. It's an effective scabbard. One of the cool things about pretty much any weapon that the Levin Lance designs is how much attention to detail he puts into it. For instance, this grip, it's got a lot of contouring to the shape, and it helps lock the knife into my hand. It's not going anywhere. And because it's a modified rectangular shape, edge alignment is a breeze. I never have a problem with knowing where the edge is. But there's a lot more to it than just that. There's some fluting carved into the rosewood here that kind of evokes a winged snake. And on the spine here, there's some carving of snake scales. So again, this might actually supposed to be dragons, I'm not sure. To me, it evokes snakes. But there's just a lot of detail wrapped up into little small bits that, you know, typically you won't see on most knives and swords. Going along with that is this brass plate along the back. Now, it's pinned into the spine, and it's got a saying in Latin. I'm going to butcher the pronunciation, but it's Bestia proponent, Deus disponent, which basically means beast proposes, God disposes. And this is something that the Levin Lance has put into quite a few of his different theming and just the overall lore of his Seekers and the Lodge and everything he's been doing. It's a recurring theme in his designs, as is the brass inlaid cross. Now, this is a little simpler than a lot of the crosses he usually puts in. Oftentimes there's going to be the full Lodge logo, but I happen to like just the simplicity of this little brass inlay here. It looks nice, and it adds a little touch of class to the blade. Something else that the Levin Lance likes a lot in his designs is these curved fullers, or just fluting on the blade, something to give it more depth and dimension as it transitions from the guard through the choil into the blade itself. Now these fullers are pretty well executed. I think Purna Darnal has improved on his fuller executions since, for instance, I reviewed the Heron Mark sword that he made for me, where the fuller was pretty mushy and soft. This is considerably crisper. Now it's not as crisp as you'll see on a high-end sword from somebody like Albion, but it's pretty good. It's pretty straight, and just overall they look good. The blade is polished to what I would consider a soft mirror. That is, it's reflective, I can see my face in it, but it's not a super bright and clear polish. And there's still some grinding lines you can see in it, and a little bit of waviness in the blade, not really a big deal. The geometry of the blade, it starts quite thick here and doesn't really taper at all until it gets to the very long clip point, which this false edge is not sharpened, but it's very close. It would not take very much to get this up to quite sharp. One of the things that I really like about this knife, and honestly everything that I've had experience with from Purna, is the edge geometry. This is one smooth bevel all the way to the edge, and it's apple seated nicely. And the thing with Purna, he does the final apexing of the sharpness so very well. Everything I've experienced from him just comes incredibly sharp and durably sharp too. It doesn't have one of those edges that is so thin and fragile that it'll break, it'll chip or dull easily. Purna sharpens extremely well, and it really does show on this blade. So handling wise, this is a very nimble knife. I am not at all practiced with a knife. I use swords, I don't really use knives that much, but I can move this around very quickly, very easily. I think this would be absolutely vicious in a close-up fight. It's got a lot of power for thrusting with this extremely long clip point is going to make it very effective at thrusting, but it also has a lot of cutting ability too. It doesn't have a ton of power in the cut. It is still a knife. You know, this is around a 1 foot long blade. It's not going to have a lot of weight out towards the tip to add power to the cut, but it's extremely sharp, and it has enough oomph to it that you can really put some power into it, but it's also light enough that, you know, just a flick of the wrist will do excellent cutting. And if you put a lot of power into the cut, you're going to do a lot of damage. So I should find at least something to criticize on this knife, right? You know, I can't just sit here and gush the entire time. There is one incredibly minor thing that bothers me, and it's the choil here. This right here, the edge, the corner where the choil turns into the blade is very sharp. It is very easy to get poked by that. And, you know, if I'm oiling the blade with a cloth, it catches on the cloth very easily. And even just when I'm moving this around, when I've been handling it here, it's poked me a couple times and it's a little uncomfortable. Very, very minor, yes. But hey, it is a very slight criticism. The fact that that's pretty much the only thing that I can bring up when I'm looking for criticisms of this should tell you how much I like this knife. This is a lot of fun. And frankly, bravo both to the Levin Lance for designing it and for Purna for making it so well. And that's going to wrap up this mini review of the Heretic. I want to give my heartfelt thanks to the Levin Lance for sending this to me for review. It's not a gift, I do have to send it back, which is something of a shame. But regardless, I really appreciate it. Thank you, Nate.